All right, welcome back once again. And we are finishing up our conversation about metabolic syndrome and the associated illnesses. And today we're going to talk briefly about mitochondrial dysfunction, mitochondria, because ultimately they are the powerhouse of the cell. We're learning that aging is a mitochondrial dysfunction issue, metabolic syndrome. I mean, basically the mitochondria are the root cause. What's the one thing the ring that controls them all, the one thing, the Occam's razor, the thing that connects all the dots, and in many ways, mitochondrial dysfunction is. So maybe briefly, Dr. Jenski, talk about how is this true? Is this possible? Like, how can one thing tell me? I don't believe you.
How very dramatic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't believe you. How is this possible?
It's possible. It's not only possible, but it's absolutely true. And it's happening all day, every day in many, many, many people, and definitely all of our patients. So the mitochondria that we once upon a time were taught and many people still believe are the power plant of the cell. This is true. It's an ancient bacteria that was basically about to get killed and said, wait, let's cut a deal. Gets incorporated into the cell structure as an organelle that now functions to help us. And basically without mitochondria, we're not breathing. So they make energy, yes, but it goes so far beyond that. And ultimately what they're doing is, balancing our redox poise. So are we oxidative or are we balancing our antioxidative status? Are we able to use an oxidative burst to attack an infection that we need? What is the state of our immune system? Is it balanced or not? Are we inflamed or not? What's our neurotransmitter status? Are our hormones doing what they're supposed to do? I mean, it's literally doing all those things and serving the purpose of making energy, and the canary in the coal mine, sensing both internally and externally what's going on and what it needs to do for us to really truly function appropriately. So when you look at it through that lens of the breadth of what it does beyond just make energy, then what can contribute to mitochondrial dysfunction? What are the root causes? Well, undernourishment, overnourishment, being overfed, the one that nobody really talks about. Like, we're in a state, yes, there are food deserts in this country and around the world, there's starvation, but we are overfed, and that is a problem. Micronutrient deficiencies, things like CoQ10 and B vitamins, mag and carnitine, oxidative stress and poor reactive oxygen species clearance, gut dysbiosis and environmental toxins, lack of hormetic stress. I mean, dive into some of these. Dive into like the environmental toxin ones. What are some of the ones that are big? Include into that category medications that are mitochondrial toxicants. I mean, talk about some of these things and how you see them.
Before I go into that, going back to that question, how is this possible? One of the big catchphrases these days has been senescent cells.
Yeah.
And then the cell danger response.
Yep.
And both of those are mitochondrial issues. The senescent cells or zombie cells that can't turn into cancer cells are cells that become dysfunctional in energy production and become these inflammatory cells that don't work quite well. The cell danger response, by definition, you're getting stuck. Like the cell cycle gets stuck, which ultimately, what determines when the cells die? What determines, hey, I can say when cells get recycled, they take their body parts and share them. They basically deconstruct. Hey, I got this ribosome. I'm going to give it to this cell here. Or if they're too bad off, they'll actually be attacked by immune system destroyed. The mitochondria are kind of directing that thing. So anything that affects the mitochondria is going to be bad news.
Yeah.
As far as mitochondrial toxicants and drugs, this is something that I don't like the word passion because passion implies emotions, but it's a big deal.
As emotional as you can be.
I'm passionate about it, But it's like 30%. There's a textbook of pharmacology interactions. And in that book, I forget when I was reading this, a while ago, it's 30% of drugs are mitochondrial toxicants. So just playing the odds, if you're on 3 drugs, you're on at least one mitochondrial toxicant. And say you took you're on a statin and for your cholesterol and a proton pump inhibitor for your reflux. And oh, by the way, I get this skin infection that someone puts me on Cipro. And now, oh my gosh, I tear my tendon. You were on the trifecta of 3 very potent mitochondrial toxicants. One's over-the-counter drug.
Yeah.
And one's given out like candy. And hopefully the Cipro, we're not using that much anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, people still use it, but it's something I learned in passing in medical school. It took me seeing people getting floxed and seeing people develop peripheral neuropathy from statins and seeing people on proton pump inhibitors, your Prilosec, Nexium, and Protonix, coming in for their cognitive decline evaluations for me to be like,
Yeah.
I think this is real, you know. It's a big deal. It's overlooked, and
100%
and
overlooked.
unfortunately, many in the functional medicine world don't have the clinical experience with the drugs, and so when their patients on it, they're like, "Well, I don't know what to do with this." It's
Yeah.
like, well, let's get you off of this. Let's fix the cholesterol so you can get off of this. And if you get infection, we have so many other antibiotics we can use. Let's just use something else.
That's
I mean,
such a great point. I never thought about it that way, in the sense that we came from somewhere else and we came from conventional medicine in two different aspects, but used a lot of drugs because that was the standard of care and what was expected in those situations. And you, in a primary care setting, probably as your brain was evolving to be more functional medicine kind of related, saw it, most likely saw it, and had a lot of like aha moments in the moment. All mine was anecdotal. Like I think about in the ER and like these cases of where I was given certain drugs here and there that were absolutely indicated and potentially life-saving. But then like, what was that doing to that person's mitochondria that might have created another problem or was exacerbating the problem that I temporarily fixed? And so now having that pharmacological knowledge that you and I bring to the functional medicine landscape really allows for us to identify these things earlier and say, hey, you know what? Like metformin has some data that shows it's a mitochondrial toxin. We just talked about how it's pro longevity and it
yeah,
helps with PCOS and it helps with weight loss and it helps reverse diabetes and this and that. You got to pick and choose your poison. And if mitochondrial dysfunction is at the root of all these things, it seems counterintuitive and counterproductive. But sometimes you have to play that card while doing other things to then maybe peel it back or use it intermittently in a cycling fashion because of the way that it activates sirtuin pathways or cyclic AMP. But like the reality is that there's a lot of stuff out there that we're taking willy-nilly that's dangerous and damaging to the mitochondria. What are some of the toxins that we see commonly?
I mean, one of my other things I'm excited about, not passionate, excited about,
Mhm.
petroleum distillates and petroleum products.
Yeah.
So, that I feel like that's come to public consciousness in the last several months with our current political state. People just didn't realize that these dyes, these blue dyes and yellow dyes, they're petroleum distillates. These natural colors, they're natural because they look natural.
Yeah.
They're petroleum distillate byproducts. One of the big things with glyphosate or Roundup, which people talk about how bad it is. I remember listening to a lecture, it was a toxicologist talking about it, and 93% inert ingredients, petroleum distillates.
Yeah.
And so we talk about how bad the glyphosate is because it blocks the shikimate pathway and blah, blah, blah. But no one talks about, you're consuming all these petroleum distillates, these solvents.
Mhm.
What does solvents do? Solvents break down fatty membranes. That's your gut lining. That's your neuron line.
That's
That's
your
like,
brain. That's your myelin. Those are your cell membranes.
yeah. And so we can talk about like forever chemicals and PFASs and blah, blah, blah. But these petroleum things, and for
Yeah.
how many years have we been consuming partially plasticized petroleum products called margarine and Crisco? How long have we been consuming those? And the answer is
A long time.
decades,
Yeah.
right? If it's really funny, you take oil comes out of the ground, it's liquid, and then we turn it into the plastic in this place. That's what plasticization. It's a polymerization kind of product, and you can take PVC, polyvinyl chloride. The piping in my house for my plumbing. We do all these kind of cool things with it. Maybe I'm passionate about because my dad was in this industry for 30 some years, and he got all this free Reynolds wrap he brought home, and we wrapped everything in it. And that's probably one of the reasons why my aluminum levels were really high when I first started doing this. But we know you can take something liquid and turn it to solid. Petroleum jelly. What's petroleum jelly?
Yeah.
But no one's like, wait a second, margarine? Yeah, corn oil, vegetable oil. Vegetable oil and corn oil are supposed to be this yellow solid, right? Not this, no, this yellow liquid, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you're consuming that, it gets stuck in your cell membranes, your cell walls. And ultimately, what do we use to help revitalize mitochondria? Phosphatidylcholine,
Mhm.
phosphatidylinositol,
Mhm.
phosphatidylethylamine,
Mhm.
right? These are phospholipids, these are fats that actually, particularly the PE and PI, that are super critical for mitochondrial function.
Mhm.
We start putting in dysfunctional fats, you start making lipid rafts in the cell wall. All of a sudden, of course, you're going to cause dysfunctional mitochondria. Oh, by the way, there's this thing called aerotoxic syndrome. It's a illness, airline pilots, airline stewardess, or people working in oil factories, where they basically develop this chronic fatigue fiber kind of picture from exposure to petroleum distillates.
Yeah. It's all mitochondria.
Yeah, and how often are we exposed to petroleum distillates today?
It's
all,
everywhere.
all the time. So
So you do a human oil change, right? You give them good lipids, exchange out the bad ones, clean the diet up.
the body is so cool. If you give the body the right kind of
Yeah.
fats, it does the rest.
Yeah.
So lots of those. Then you have all the other chemical stuff,
Yeah.
which I could blabber on about
And
that.
heavy metals
And heavy
and
metals and
mycotoxins and other
mycotoxins.
biotoxins. I mean, those are all mitochondrial toxins. And then how does the gut affect mitochondria? I mean, we alluded to it a little bit, but
The gut is interesting. It's you're talking about the gut microbiome.
yeah.
And so the gut microbiome, it's interesting because you have all these signaling molecules. MRNA became a big deal. Well, micro mRNA are things that are in plants. And a lot of these bacteria in your gut actually release these signaling molecules, these peptides.
Mhm.
Peptides are becoming a fancy kind of thing, GLP-1s in the longevity world. But bacteria in your body make these organic acids. They make butyrate. They make
Mhm.
butyrate. Oh my gosh, short chain fatty acids. These are signaling molecules that go to the mitochondria and say, burn off this bad stuff.
Mhm.
Not only do they help with leaky gut, they also help revitalize mitochondria.
Yeah.
What's the source of butyrate? The biggest source is fermentation in your gut. Yes, ghee has it. Yes, fermented foods have it. But the biggest source is actually the fiber you were talking about before
Yeah.
eating. And then
Fiber in the right bugs, right? Akkermansia, Rosburgia, Ruminococcus, Faecalibacterium. Get the right players, feed them what they want, and they make a bunch of magical stuff for you.
and the short chain fatty acids are key players.
They burn out the lipid rafts. Like that's
Yeah.
part of that whole lipid exchange that you were talking about, that oil change. Like the cell membrane and the mitochondrial membrane is supposed to be this lipid bilayer that's fluid, and you get these bad fats in there, it just gets stuck. And then the mitochondria get stuck because they're in cell cycle arrest. Everything's just stuck.
Yeah.
You got to unstick it. But if you put a bunch of margarine on stuff, it's going to be sticky, right? Like that just makes logical sense to me.
Was industrialized seed oils.
Yeah.
I mean,
All of it.
Which now finally again is coming to public consciousness. people are now talking about, hey, there's restaurants now taking seed oils out. There's an app you can get. So it's like wow, finally after I think Crisco came into the American food system was like 1908, I think, something like that.
Wow.
So it's like, wow, we might actually
117 years and we figured it out.
Jeez. I know.
All right.
It's
So
embarrassing.
so now we know what mitochondrial dysfunction kind of looks like. We've gone really in depth about all the metabolic derangements that really at the core is the mitochondria. And we've talked a little bit about some other things that you wouldn't think of that not necessarily are a disease label, but rather how it comes to fruition. So what are your support strategies? I mean, you kind of broke this up into nutrition, lifestyle, gut detox, which we touched on a little bit, some testing. Like, let's start with nutrition. How do you eat for mitochondrial health?
Well, it's interesting because, first you need to eat real food, of course, unprocessed, healthy fats, clean protein, all the usual colorful foods, yada yada yada. But actually, one of the quickest ways to rejuvenate your mitochondria, one of my things, the newest superfood is fasting. It's just like, literally that stress, stressing your mitochondria, forcing your body to go from a sugar metabolism to a glycogen metabolism to a fat-based metabolism. That forces fluidity, it forces resilience in the cells. That by itself improves mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, what do? We get up and have breakfast, have a snack, have lunch, have a snack, have dinner, have a snack, and wonder why our mitochondria, the average American,
Overnutrition.
yeah, in the mid 1800s ate a meal and a half a day. The ancient Spartans ate one meal a day. This whole 3 square meals a day is marketing from the 50s and on, right? And so part of our mitochondrial dysfunction thing is we are just overfed and overfeeding. Eating creates inflammation. Breaking down food creates inflammation. It requires nutrients. And when you're eating high calorie, low nutritional value food, it's automatically going to induce nutrient deficiencies and mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah,
so eating,
push that deficit.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden eating high quality food with some fasting.
What's high quality food?
Real food.
Yeah.
Real food. Unprocessed, not ultra processed, no industrialized seed oils,
diversified, lots of plants, lots of color, lots of polyphenols. What are some polyphenol rich foods? You said one already earlier about the cardiovascular stuff.
Well, there's pomegranate.
Glug.
Extra virgin olive oil, pomegranates, grapes, anything colorful.
Berries, olive oil, dark chocolate, coffee, tea.
Even nuts have polyphenols in them. Supplement wise, I really like curcumin. I really like resveratrol.
Yeah.
I really like quercetin.
Yeah.
But those things are just eating a colorful diet is like,
Yeah.
you know,
Of whole foods,
of whole foods,
quality protein,
of real
healthy
stuff.
fats, lots
Yeah,
of
yeah.
plants, lots of fiber.
With some fasting in there,
Yeah.
you know, and the literature is interesting. The best kind of fasting, sure, let's sell a patient a Prolon kit, whatever. The literature though is with water fasting,
Yeah.
3 to 5 days. I mean, that actually elite athletes are doing that to actually improve their mitochondrial function, so that before the race they can actually, when they exhaust all their energy, the mitochondria are like, we're fasted, buddy. We know how to do this. You know, ketogenic diet. So ketogenic athletes actually, for a while, like the Tour de France, like winners back to back were actually ketogenic athletes.
Mm.
You know, which is the exact opposite of what I was told. You know, I don't know what you told when you played soccer, like carb up,
Yeah.
and they're like,
Yeah. Always.
yeah,
Every halftime we had like oranges, right?
yeah,
Or Gatorade. And then
yeah,
after every soccer game, we
yeah,
would get snacks and it was usually
yeah.
carb and sugar heavy.
Yeah, the second wind you get when you were like a marathon runner is the second wind, or an athlete, you kind of crash.
Yeah.
Your second wind, that's literally you felt your metabolism switch into ketosis, and people who are really competitive will have that crash, and it's like, well, that was kind of self-induced.
Yeah.
So
So what about lifestyle? What are some of the lifestyle things you like to fold in? I mean, diet, that makes sense.
yeah,
Fasting makes sense.
well, there's a lot of things like HIIT, high energy interval training, that is huge. Breath work, inducing hypoxia. There's this fancy thing you can do where you actually get on a bike and it gives you like 15 to 18% oxygen, um, hypoxia, and you exercise through that. Cold plunges. You know, there's a lot of things that actually will stimulate mitochondrial
Yeah,
function.
I love that one.
You love that one.
Yeah, cold plunging's great. I mean, I don't do it as often as I would like. I've done it and my body always responds with a bolt of energy. And now what I do is I'll take a warm shower, and at the end of the shower when I'm done cleaning myself, I turn it all the way as cold as it can get, and I'll stand there for as long as I can stand there. And so there's ways to kind of hack it. Sauna's another one, right? These therapies of hormesis, right? So a hormetic stressor is something that stresses the body and not past some point. So the net gain is that when that stressor is removed, you're actually stronger for it. So it's benefit, it's exercise, it's fasting, it's cold plunging, it's sauna, it's things that we've already talked about. But hormetic stressors are great. Red light therapy, sleep, you've talked about. You know, some of the gut things you mentioned, butyrate. We talked a little bit about probiotics, prebiotics, and the support of fiber, liver. What kind of specific nutrients do you
Yeah.
give for mitochondria? Like someone says, "Hey doc, sounds to me like what you just said, all this mumbo jumbo is that my mitochondria aren't working." That's all I heard.
Yeah.
And you know, give me 5 supplements, 5 specific nutrients that I should be taking.
Ubiquinol, not
Okay.
CoQ10, because it's the active form, goes right in the cells. Some form of niacin, whether it's NAD. Currently, I'm using more NMN, nicotinamide
Yeah,
mononucleotide,
I
which
like
is
NR also.
okay. Nicotine riboside is another good one. There's closer to making NAD. It's kind of hard. NAD is a little pricey, but we won't go into
My understanding is that NAD doesn't get into the cell. It has to be
it.
converted into NMN to get into the cell to get back into NAD. So
Yeah.
why not just take the precursor, which is what
Yeah.
I do that, or nicotinamide riboside. I like
This
those.
is true. Yeah.
All right,
So
so
some
ubiquinol, one of those.
yeah,
What else?
ubiquinol, the NM and MR, all brain fart. Carnitine, acetyl-carnitine.
Mhm.
There's regular carnitine, acetyl-carnitine,
Mhm.
and this whole lipid shuttle kind of thing. If you're having someone with more neurological issues, I'm going to use the acetyl-carnitine. If
Mhm.
it's not, I'll just use regular carnitine. I tend to use a product that has both of those in there.
Yeah.
I like creatine
Yeah.
as well. It's great. I mean, one of the realities, a lot of these nutrients I'm talking about, like once you hit 50, like you don't make them as well.
Just take
So,
them.
so you probably need 100 milligrams of ubiquinol if you're over 50. You
Yeah.
probably need 3 to 5 grams of creatine. Same thing for the carnitine.
Even measure levels for CoQ10. I'll measure levels and push them. Like normal is way too low. I try to drive their numbers up above 3.
Yeah.
And then creatine is one of these things where I think everybody would benefit for the most part from 5 grams, 10 grams a day, something like that.
If your kidneys work, you drink plenty of water.
Yeah, it's super easy. And even there's good literature on even higher doses for bone health and brain health.
Yeah.
20, 50
yeah.
milligrams. I mean, you really got to watch the kidneys. What about mag?
Well, you said 5.
Yeah.
So, depends on my day. And, the next one that came to mind was ribose.
D-ribose.
Yeah, it was ribose.
Uh-huh.
And then B vitamins.
Yes.
Because you look at the electron transport chain,
Mhm.
it's B1, B2, it's B6, it's all this kind of stuff. obviously magnesium. And, magnesium, I probably should put that at the top of the list. You're correct, because 80% of Americans are magnesium deficient.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe magnesium should be at the top of the list
So
for this.
mag, Bs, some ubiquinol, some NAD precursor,
Yeah.
maybe creatine, maybe carnitine, alpha lipoic acid, maybe a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, alpha lipoic
I
acid.
make sure they're getting omegas, or at least eating omegas. I might do some lipid stuff, some PC or something along those lines. That's it. That's like PQQs. You can layer PQQ in, maybe some ribose, and there are
Well,
formularies
that's
that
getting
have
closer
all
to
these.
that's getting closer to 12.
I know,
So,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's so many of
yeah.
them. And
There are products that have like kind of everything in it.
yeah,
But it's like if someone comes to me with chronic fatigue and fibro, then I'm shooting for like 5 grams of creatine 2 to 3 times a day.
yeah,
I'm shooting for the CL-carnitine a gram twice a day, right?
yeah.
So it depends if just for health. If someone comes in, my daughter, for example, she's on 200 milligrams twice a day of the ubiquinol, which is specific for my. So it really depends if it's just general health
Yeah.
versus I have a neurological
Therapeutic
issue.
intervention.
Those are going to be 2 different
Yeah.
doses for individuals.
Can you test for mitochondrial function?
You can. There's a mito swab. It's like a little cheap thing you can do. I haven't done it just because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And yeah. And
What about indirect testing? How do you work it up? I mean, what are you looking at?
you're looking at metabolic stuff. You can
Right.
do like from carnitine. You can do free carnitine levels, free
Yeah.
LDH, lactate dehydrogenase levels.
Yeah.
That's one of those markers that's up with metabolic issues. What other blood tests
What
are
about like
specific?
oat testing?
Okay,
That
thank
could
you for that.
help.
Yeah, if you want to, that's better if you're doing like organic acid testing, because you
Mhm.
get a bunch of different organic acids that are highly suggestive, and it come across the citric acid cycle going to the electron transport chain. It'll
Yeah.
give you what things are off, and then you can kind of like plug in what will help with
Yeah.
support.
You can see macronutrient metabolism through the
Yeah.
TCA cycle into mitochondria. So I love oat testing and looking at that. You can get lactate and pyruvate through a basic lab.
Yeah.
You can get LDH through a basic lab. You can get carnitine and free fatty acid through a basic lab. So these are all things that we test all the time. You don't even need to be a functional doctor, nor do you need to have an account with one of these functional labs.
What's interesting, because like the patients of mine I'm doing those in are like my autistic pandas, pans,
Yeah.
neurodevelopmental, because they almost always have a mito issue.
Yeah.
And then if you have a kid with an elevated pyruvate, it's like you have one of my young guys, he was a POS dysautonomia patient, hypermobile, chronic fatigue. He's like, it's like 13 or 14 now, doing great, but his pyruvate at one point in time was sky high. Now it's normalized.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool to see that and to see it clinically correlate with him feeling
Yeah,
better.
that's awesome. It also, on the other end of that coin, when there's not significant pathology, I use this test for optimization. Like they're doing
Yeah.
everything else good and their numbers look great. What does your nutritional status look like? Let's look at a NutriVal or metabolomics or whatever your soup of the day is and see what it shows. And I've also had it help me with the metabolic stuff. So if I have a pre-diabetic that I'm stuck with and we do metabolomics and it shows that they have a really high B2 need, but when we measured B2 in their serum, it's completely normal, maybe
Yeah.
even high normal, but their body's screaming for more. I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
Now we give them a bunch of riboflavin 5-phosphate and all of a sudden their A1C drops. There was a missing link there somewhere. So it could be really insightful in a very monocular way. If you won't know if you don't test.
And I've had some patients where I've done thiamine therapy on.
Yeah. Oh, that works great for the TCA cycle. I mean,
Yeah. It's like, and what's the dose? 1,000 milligrams to 3,000 milligrams of the stuff. And like, well, what's the usual dose? 50,
yeah.
100 grams. And sometimes you're doing thiamine shots. I've
Yeah.
had some patients with tremors related to neurodegeneration, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, have them stabilize out. Some of my POTS dysautonomia patients,
Yeah.
using that cocktail with some IV vitamin C and
Do
things.
you do bemphotiamine in them?
I do. The literature I looked at was more allophyamine,
Okay.
which is the garlic-based one.
Do
But
you-
the reality is, to be honest with you, like if I can get the person to, I'm gonna say, look, we could fiddle around with this. How much does a B1 shot cost?
It's cheap.
It's like $5.
Yeah.
Let's just do this twice a week for 2 months. It's gonna help us not.
Yeah.
If it's like, oh my gosh, it's gonna help, then we'll do some oral stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a hard sell, but it's otherwise you're like fiddling with stuff and do I have the right dose or not have the right dose? Because really, you need 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of oral thiamine to be equivalent to a 100 milligram shot IM. And that's a lot of pills, right? So sometimes the selling point's hard to get someone to like dive into that. Well, on a side note, I'm really big about IV vitamin C, and for for years, I thought, with my hypermobile POTS patients, I thought, the magic is vitamin C. That's what's helping their dysautonomia in POTS. And then I read a book about dysautonomia, and it was from a pediatrician at the Cleveland Clinic, and he would use thiamine IV, um, magnesium, B6 with these when these was like the kids with heart failure and just all kinds of weird stuff ended up being mito issues, and the specialists were like, it's all of our testing's normal. He's like, well, let's do this, and they would get better, right? And I started rethinking, like the IVs, is it the C or is it this mitochondrial support? And we put close to a gram of magnesium in our IVs, right? They're getting lots of magnesium. They're getting 100 milligrams of IV thiamine. They're getting 1 to 2 milligrams of B12 of methylcobalamin. They're getting these high doses, and all of a sudden, I'm started rethinking: is the magic really the B's and the mag, not the C? So this was our end for metabolic issues, the metabolic mayhem that's going on. Hopefully, this information was helpful just to help you wrap your brain around metabolic illnesses, metabolic syndrome, metabolism, mitochondria, when you hear about it, because it's really popular right now. And ultimately, it's a big deal. If you have a topic you'd like us to talk about, something you've heard, read, please let us know in social media. Drop a thing here below. Ultimately, the purpose of these is to educate, encourage, and empower people so that you'll know how to take care of your health. And of course, nothing here is meant to diagnose or treat anybody. You should all see your own doctor for that kind of help. And otherwise, we'll talk to you all soon.